Hey guys, I'm Chalena,
And I'm Courtney.
and this is Mysteries at the Coffee Shop. And we have some exciting news before we get to our story, so
We have merch!
we do have merch! Yay! We don't have that many episodes and not a huge following, but we do have a merch shop. Some of the designs are super, super cute, like this one. You guys can go on there, and I think there's like a couple designs. So just go ahead, check it out. If you want to order something, we'd really appreciate it. They are all designed by moi, so, you know, I did a good job. I did good. If you please want to buy one, the link should be in our link tree.
Yes.
There is a link to the link tree in every social media account.
Yes.
Touch the link tree. Explore the branches of the link tree.
Yes. There's quite a few.
Quite a few. And today's story is going to be the Dyatlov Pass incident. So, before we get started, what do you know about the Dyatlov Pass incident?
Not much at all. This is something that I think I've heard in passing, maybe online a couple times, but I don't know anything about it.
Okay, sweet. So that's a lot of what I've heard when I ask people about the Dyatlov Pass incident. So the only reason why I know of it was because I think it was back in 2015. Some weird time when I was a teenager on the internet watching Markiplier and PewDiePie or whatever, but they had this weird indie game that was based off of that incident, and you played as the abominable snowman or yeti and basically ran around and murked people.
Oh, lovely.
Which is kind of messed up because this is actually a really horrific incident.
Yes.
And, I think I like the idea of the yeti. However, I don't think it's something that we should base the video game of murking people off of.
Right.
Right. So, without further ado, let's get into it.
Yes.
So, January 25th of 1959, a group of 10 college students and college graduates began a skiing expedition through the northern Ural Mountains in the Soviet Union. Also, please excuse me, I am doing my best to pronounce these words. So, this incident will soon be known as the Dyatlov Pass incident, which is going to be one of the greatest mysteries of the 20th century. So, a little bit of background. The group consisted of 8 men and 2 women, and they are all from the same university. So the university is the Ural Polytechnical Institute, and these guys were all experienced hikers and skiers. So they've had certificates, they've had trophies, so they knew what they were doing, and they were part of the sports committee and the sports club of their school. So yeah, this expedition was supposed to be a super fun adventure for them, and after this expedition, they would have gotten their grade 3 certification for hiking and skiing.
Wow.
Most of them have already had their second one, and then, many of the group had been on plenty of expeditions way before this one. So, Igor Dyatlov, this is his last name, is what the whole incident was named after because he was the leader of the group.
Okay.
He was a 23-year-old male. And then there is Yuri, which, by the way, I don't know why, but 3 of them are named Yuri. So I'm assuming it's a really popular name.
Right.
I guess it's when you walk out to a group of white women and half of them are named Rachel.
Very true.
Very true. Yes.
Very
okay.
True.
So the next one's name is Yuri Doroshenko. He is a male, 21 years old.
That is so young.
Well, the next one is the youngest. So her name is Ludmila. She is a female, 20 years old.
Wow.
Yuri Krivoshenko. We're just gonna call him Kriv, but he is 23-year-old male. Zenyatta Kolmogorova. So sorry. Female, 22 years old. We're going to call her Zena.
Okay.
Because that's what, everyone in the group called her. And then there is Rustim Slobodin. He's a male, 23 years old. Nikolai Thibault Brignoles, male, 23. And then this one, he's a little weird. So this is Simon Zolotorio. He's a male, but he's about 10 years their senior, so he's 38 years old.
That's quite a jump in age.
It is. And, you know, this guy, I'm seeing a picture of this guy, and his mustache is a little sus, but we get further into the story, you'll see why he's a little more sus to me.
Okay.
And then the next one is Alexander Kolatov. He is a male, 24 years old. And then the last one is Yuri Yudin, male, 21 years old, also known as the sole survivor of the incident.
Wow.
Yeah, the only one that lived out of the 10. So I just want to give more background. So
okay.
The route that they took was designed by the group. So, you know, the group got together, they said, hey, this is the route we're going to take. It's going to go near Trail 5, whatever. And then the Committee of Physical Culture and Sports, they confirmed this. And, you know, they backed it. That committee and then the school backed this expedition. And they approved of the 10 people in January 8th of 1959. The goal of this expedition was to reach the top of Ural Mountain, 10 kilometers to the north of where the incident happened. And again, like, this was supposed to be a Category 3 expedition, and it was undertaken in February. So that was, like, the hardest time to do it just because of all the snow and the weather. So obviously they knew from the start that this was going to be a difficult route.
I can't imagine going on a big, long hike in February.
I can't imagine going on a hike in general.
Yeah, right?
Especially in, like, negative 4-degree weather.
Yes.
No, you will not be catching my ass outside doing that.
That is tough.
If I did it, I'd be complaining the whole time.
Me too.
So I just want to put out that this was a group of very brave,
mm-hmm.
very strong-willed people. I am not one of those people.
Me either.
So let's get into the expedition.
Okay.
I just want to note that almost every member of this group had a journal and a camera. And then they had a group journal as well. So,
wow.
Yeah, so this is why, like, the whole expedition and everything, like, that's why everyone knows small details and stuff,
right.
is because they did log everything that they did.
It's very well documented, especially to be taking place in the 50s. They're very well prepared.
Right. 1959, yeah, that was, like, 64 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. But also, like, you look at the pictures and you see them, like, just hanging out, enjoying life,
mm-hmm.
and meeting new people, and, you know, you think about it and you're like, these pictures don't look any different from any pictures that we would take if we went on a skiing trip
right.
or something. Like, they're all smiling, they're having fun, they're cutting back. So it made me a little sad to look at these pictures.
I bet.
Right, so let's go on the timeline. Let's look down the timeline of the expedition and see what all happened. So on January 23rd, the group received their route books, which they made their route, but they're supposed to hit certain cities to check in. So they were certified to go on this route. Simon, however, was added to the group on the 23rd. So he was a last-minute addition.
And that was the older man.
Yes, that was the older man.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was supposed to go on a different expedition, but I'm not sure what happened. I don't know if it got canceled or whatnot. But he ended up not going on that expedition. So the committee was like, all right, well, like, you can go on this one with these kids. That way they have someone older to guide them, someone who's a World War II veteran, someone maybe who has a little bit more wisdom and knowledge.
Right.
So he was added on last minute, the 23rd. On the 25th, the group arrived by train to, I think the town is called Ivdel, in the early morning hours. And then from there, they took a truck to Vizha, so they all jumped in the back of a truck. And there's a really cute picture of all of them in the truck, just having fun and laughing. And then once they got to Vizha, they purchased supplies. They got a bunch of loaves of bread, and they stayed the night in the hotel. So they stayed there for, like, 2 days gathering supplies, like, meeting new people. And I guess, like, loaves of bread because, like, what else can you bring out there that won't just be unpleasant to eat?
And they seem very well-versed and very knowledgeable to be that young. I can't imagine a group of our age people going on a big, long hiking trip and being this prepared, so,
Courtney, they are our age.
I know. I
They're
can't
your
imagine
age.
us going
Oh,
out
no,
here
no.
and being this prepared.
Absolutely not. We drove to McDonald's down the street and screamed because we didn't know how to turn into the McDonald's.
Yes. Very good example.
And these kids were also bright. I mean, like, they were in the... I know I said they were in the Polytechnical University, but, like, they were studying to be engineers and stuff.
Wow.
Like,
Okay.
these were a bright group of kids. I say kids because I'm 25, but I'm not that much older, to be honest. Anyways, you know, they stayed in Vizhoff for a little bit. On the 27th is when they began their trek. They headed towards Gora or Tortin, which is the goal. They were supposed to hit, like, you know, the top of that mountain. And then on the 28th, Yuri Yudin backed out of the expedition. This is why he's known as the lone survivor. He ended up getting sciatica and just kind of really hurting, so he just withdrew from illness. He was like, look, guys, I can't do this anymore. My legs are hurting, my joints are screaming, and they're like, you know what, that's fine, head back. And then, like, Igor, you know, pulled him to the side and was like, hey, listen, like, I'm gonna send word back, hopefully by February the 12th. We should be done by then, we'll catch up later, you know, like...
Right.
They were sad to see him go, but,
Right.
like, they totally understood. I would not want to do a whole expedition and freezing temperatures, like, hurting. Like, that,
Absolutely.
that sucks. So, like, Yuri, you know, he just went back home.
I bet he has an immense amount of survivor's guilt, you know.
Oh, absolutely. And, like, I think they've done tons of interviews with him, and they're like, do you know why they could have done this? And he was like, I'll do my best to answer. Like, we were really close, but... You know, even he doesn't know the answer as to what happened.
Bless his heart.
So on January the 31st, the group arrived to the edge of the highland area, and they set up camp and prepared to climb the mountaintop. So basically, they trekked all that way, got to the bottom of the mountain, and then they set up camp. And then when they do that, they set up camp at the base of the mountain. There are things that are like, they're like platforms that, you know, hikers and stuff, they set all their stuff on the platform, like all their extra stuff, like their loaves of bread, their butter, their whatever, you know, stuff that you don't want to lug up the mountain with you. So they leave it there, and then when they come back down the mountain, they grab all the same stuff and, like, trek back with it, so they have supplies.
Okay.
So they left a lot of stuff at the end of the mountain. And they, you know, they stayed the night there. They're like, all right, well, in the morning, you know, we'll trek up the mountain. So the 31st was when they put in their last journal entry. And I have it here, so I can read it to you.
Okay.
So, weather today is a bit worse. Wind, west. Snowing, probably from the pines, since the sky is perfectly clear. Started relatively early, around 10 a.m. Got back to Mansi Trail. Up to now, we are following the Mansi Trail, on which not so long passed a hunter with a deer. Yesterday, it seems we stumbled upon his resting stop. Deer don't go any further. The hunter took the beaten trail by himself. We are following his steps. Had a surprisingly good overnight. Air is warm and dry, though it is negative 18 degrees Celsius to negative 24 degrees Celsius. Walking is especially hard today. We can't see the trail. We have to grope our way through at times. Can't do more than 1.52 kilometers per hour. Trying out new ways to clear the path. The first in line drops his backpack, skis forward for 5 minutes, comes back for 10 to 15 for a break, then catches up with the group. That's one way to keep laying ski tracks nonstop. Hard on the second hiker, though, who has to follow the new trail with full gear on his back. Gradually, we leave the Asapia Valley. It's up towards all the way, but rather smoothly. Then birch grove replaces firs. The end of the forest is getting closer. Wind is western warm piercing, with spike-like draft from airplanes at takeoff. Fern open spaces. Can't even think of setting up storage here. It's nearly 4. Have to start looking for a place to pitch a tent. We go south to the Aspia Valley. Seems this place has the deepest snow. Wind not strong. Snow 1.22 meters deep. We're exhausted, but start setting up for the night. Firewood is scarce, mostly damp firs. We build the campfire on the logs. Too tired to dig fire pit. Dinner's in the tent. Nice and warm. Can't imagine such comfort on the ridge with howling wind outside, 100 kilometers of away from human settlements. And that was written by Igor Dyatlov.
Wow. It seems like they had a really rough time with the weather.
Honestly, yeah, but it seemed like they were making the best of it.
Yes, it seems like they were looking forward to eating their dinner and spending time in the tent, and they were doing well.
Right. And I also do want to say, like, it is a little bit of broken English because this is, like, translated from Russian. So,
right.
Like, some of the sentences were very, like, not...
Right.
Like, full sentences, but you guys get the idea.
Absolutely.
So, it's thought that, they spent the night there, and then on February the 1st, somewhere in between February the 1st and February the 2nd is when they died.
Wow. That's so soon after they started.
Right, and what kills me is, like, the last sentence of his last journal entry is, like, they're at peace. They're, like, hundreds of miles away from human settlements, and all they are with is themselves and nature. So they're enjoying their time together, and I guess there's some comfort in knowing that. But we're not going to have much comfort when I go over the autopsies.
No.
So on February the 1st, the next day, the group planned to climb over the pass and make camp for the night on the opposite side, but the weather conditions worsened, and they ended up camping on a different slope. They ended up camping on a slope, and they hoped that this would block, like, the heavy winds.
Right.
So, like, I guess you remember Mulan, where they're like, oh no, there's an avalanche, and they got behind, like, one of those slanted rocks, and it blocked out, like, the avalanche, and it went around them. I'm assuming that's what they were trying to do with the wind.
Yeah.
But, they, again, like, that's what happened. They were just like, well, fuck, I guess we gotta, like, camp out here for the night. And they did. And that's pretty much all they know at that point. I mean, like, they asked Yuri Yudin why they camped up on the slope and then just didn't head back down to the forest where it would have been safer. Because, the forest, like, would have blocked them from more oncoming snow, would have blocked them from the wind. And Yuri said that they did that because, Igor didn't want to lose altitude. They'd gotten so far and they didn't want to trek back. So, I mean, like, that seems pretty plausible.
Right.
But at the same time, like, I would have thought that the smarter thing would have been to go back down.
But also, if you work that hard just to get there, you don't want to lose that progress.
Right. And then also, like, the night is coming. And, like, the anxiety behind that when you play fucking video games or whatever. You're like, the night is coming, we must go.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, we gotta make camp now or we gonna die.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's what they did, And the aftermath of that, like, obviously when they were missing for days before people were like, yeah, we gotta go find them. So like I said before, like, Igor had talked to Yuri and was like, listen, I'll send a telegram to the sports committee and the school letting them know that we made it back to Vizha sometime around February the 12th. So when a couple days passed, like, Yuri and the club, they weren't overly, like, worried.
Right.
They're like, okay, we'll give it a couple more days and then, like, maybe we'll hear something. Well, by the time it hit near the 20th, their family members were like, hey, can you go out and find our children? Like, can you please go out? And, like, because it's been a couple days, this isn't like them. So by the 20th, their family members demanded a search and rescue. So the search and rescue was sent out on February the 21st.
Wow. That's almost 10 days after they thought they were going to get a letter.
Right. And, like, with those conditions, even if they had went on the 12th or the 13th to go find them, I don't know if they would have been saved.
Right. And that's so scary, because we think about now, like, we would go out and we would have phones and radios and, like, to make sure nothing happened. And if it did happen, we could call for help. Like, in 59, they couldn't call for help. And it's a very scary feeling.
Absolutely. I mean, like, you're SOL, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
you're just there.
I would imagine you wouldn't have cell signal though, so you're
Yeah,
still SOL.
that is true.
Either way. So
Yeah.
So again, like February the 21st, the search parties were sent out.
Okay.
On February the 26th is when they found the tent along with a flashlight, like kind of laying on top of the tent. Was a little sus because like they were able to still turn off and on the flashlight even though it was exposed to the elements.
Like it was laid there almost recently.
Yes.
That's very strange.
Yes. They're like, this is a little weird. But all the hikers' belongings were found, if not in the tent, near the tent. Like all of their snow boots, all of their outerwear, their fucking shoes.
So they weren't wearing any protective gear, but they were away from the tent.
Yeah, they weren't wearing any shoes either.
Wow.
Like they left almost everything there.
That is very concerning and strange.
Right, and then when the tent was inspected, they saw that it was cut open from both sides.
But there was a way to get out without, obviously cutting out. There was a door to get out, wasn't there?
I mean, yes, and
Okay.
it wasn't like the zipper was stuck. Okay, the front door of the tent, they were wooden pegs.
Okay.
So I don't know if you've ever had those winter jackets where you have like the cute wooden pegs and you
Yeah.
just stick it through this
Yeah.
little loop and like that's how it's closed.
It's
Like,
not terribly hard to get undone, so.
no, I feel like you could just rip. Like,
Yeah.
Superman opening his
Yeah.
button shirt, just rip it open. Like.
Rather than cutting your way out. That seems terrifying.
Right, and it was cut from the inside out, not from the outside in. So it wasn't like somebody attacked them.
It was like they were trying to escape.
Right. Sus.
Yes.
So on February the 22nd, the bodies of Kriv, Yuri Dershenko, Igor, and Zina are found.
Wow.
So they found 4 of them on the same day.
And there was 9 left after
9.
Yuri left, so they still have 5 more to find.
Right.
Wow.
So, the first 2 bodies they found were Yuri's and Kriv's.
Okay.
They were found under a cedar tree next to the remains of a fire. Igor was found about 1,100 meters from the tent and 300 meters from the cedar tree. Is where his body was found. He was lying on his back with his head in the direction of the tent, covered with snow, with his arm leaning on a small birch sapling. Zina was found by a search dog named Alta, 50 centimeters under the snow. Her head was pointing the direction of the tent, and she was frozen face down, like in a pose that like showed that she was trying to like just crawl her way towards the tent.
That's very strange considering there was cut marks from the inside out, but then you've got 2 people fighting. It almost looks like they're fighting to get back to the tent.
Right.
So almost like something chased them out of the tent and left. Now they're trying to get back to the tent.
Possibly
it's
to
very
get
strange.
To get their supplies.
Right.
So on March 5th, which is like honestly like the next week, like a hell of a lot later, the body of Restim was found.
Wow.
His body was found face down with his arms flung out, and there was 7 centimeters of ice bed underneath his body.
Oh my word.
This indicated that he was alive when he died. Like, his body was still warm.
Oh my gosh.
So, like, the idea of it is that since his body was still warm, some of the snow melted underneath him and created a little ice bed. So he was still alive when he was laying down.
And that's such a long time after to find him. Like, his family didn't have that closure for so long, and some of the other families did.
Right. And then this next 2 months, because March, April, May, May the 5th, they found what they call the den and the bodies of the last 4 hikers.
Oh my gosh.
So Ludmila was the first one to be found. She was found on her knees with her body pressed onto a rock.
That is very strange.
And then the last 3 were found together. So Alexander was laying behind Simon as if to like protect his body from something, and then 30 centimeters downstream, Nikolai was found.
Wow. It's a very odd position for her to be found in, like leaning against a rock.
Right. So, now that we've talked about the bodies being found and stuff, we can go into further detail of the tent, which I kind of like let it slip and went through most of the details right when we got to the tent. But like I said, the tent, the tent was found, and it seemed that the tent was cut from the inside out on both sides. Not just one side, on both sides.
Wow.
So at the bottom of the tent, there were 9 backpacks there. Like, they left all their backpacks, their personal items, jackets, coats, 9 pairs of shoes. So again, they left everything.
Wow.
And then the cuts, on the inside, it seemed like they were cut from a knife. I don't know what else you would cut a tent with.
Yeah.
I mean, they had an ice axe.
Well,
which you could, yeah. But they seem to be cut with, like, the knife. However, like, some of the cuts didn't make it all the way through the tent. So, like, it seemed like they struggled to open it.
Right.
Even though, like, the front of the tent wasn't hard to open.
Yeah.
So, and then the way that the tent was set up, like, it was set up pretty sturdy, because the way that it's set up is, like, you have, like, a pole, another pole, and then what holds the middle of the tent is the rope in between the 2 poles.
Mm-hmm.
And hanging from the rope in between the 2 poles is, like, a heater that has, like, a chimney.
Mm-hmm.
That's, like, it's, like, L-shaped, and, like, the last part of the L is sticking out so that the smoke goes out. So, like, it has to be set up pretty sturdy to be able to hold the heater up there.
And the material was most likely really thick to protect them from the elements,
Actually, I said it was kind of thin.
Oh, well, never mind.
I keep thinking that, like, this has to be, like, some hardcore hiking gear, and then I realized that it's 1959.
That is true. But also, if their knives didn't go through it, were they so weak that they couldn't? Or, like,
the knives are dull.
That's true.
But I don't know why you'd bring a dull knife.
Yeah, because they are experienced. And what scares you so bad to leave your shoes, all your gear, protective weather clothing,
Right, because, like, honestly, if you go out there with none of that, that's a death sentence on its own.
Absolutely.
So that was a little sus.
That's scary.
That's a little scary. And, of course, like, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll be posting pictures on the video, because I just recently learned how to do that.
We can also post some on Instagram as well, so you can flip through and see what we see and what we were talking about.
Right. So, yeah, here are some diagrams of the tent and, like, how the tent was set up. You see what I'm talking about? And all their stuff was still in there.
So scary.
Right.
Especially knowing that it's still a mystery, right? That
it's still a mystery. And, like, from when the tent was discovered, they're like, oh, there's footprints. Let's go, like, follow the footprints. And that's how they found the bodies of the first 4. Of course, like, by the time they found Rastim, like, obviously the footprints were gone.
Right.
But following those footprints, they did find, like, another flashlight somewhere down the lines. And I do want to go ahead and apologize if, like, I don't get all the details on this case, because this case was extremely detailed. But not only was it extremely detailed, there seems to be some missing pieces of information, which, again, I will go into that further, because I think that may be one of the reasons why this case was not solved. So, yeah, they followed these footprints, and that's how they found, like, the 4 bodies. And, like, they kept finding, like, little items, like, along the way as well. So I want to say the way that it was found, they found the bodies kind of in reverse, and then they had to trek back a little bit to find the other bodies.
Okay.
So on my map where the bodies were found in relation to the tent, it's just a little strange to me, at least. So it looks like, from what I can tell, from my theories, I don't know if this is anything official, but it looks like from the tent, they all ran down to the woods where the cedar tree was at.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that, Igor, Rustim, and Zena's bodies were found, it looked like they're like, all right, this isn't working. We need to go back and get our stuff. And they, took what they could off of their friends who already did not make it.
Oh.
So, Kriv and Yuri, they were, the way that their bodies were laid, it looked like they had taken the clothes off of them and laid them next to each other, with care. Because, they were their friends, so they took what they had and then tried to make it back to the tent to get more supplies. And that's when they slowly, one body fell, and they're like, okay, well, we gotta keep going. Another body fell, and another body fell.
It's so traumatic.
Right, and then, going off the map, the 4 in the den were found not too far from the cedar tree at all. And it seemed like they were the ones who lasted longer than the other ones. So, there's a lot of, arguments about that as well, because there just is. Nobody was there with them, and anyone who was there with them they're dead.
Yeah. There's nobody left to tell the story.
No, they're not. It's very, the further you look into it, the more questions you have.
Right.
I thought I was gonna find so many answers, all of the answers, and, I just have more questions.
Mm-hmm.
I am confusion. How this makes sense?
So far, it doesn't at all.
This is why I'm not a private investigator.
Me too.
Alright, so let's go over the bodies of Kriv and Yuri found at the cedar tree. So, investigators say that there was a flat area next to a cedar tree, and that's where they found the remains of the fire. And about 3 meters from the fire, they found Yuri and Kriv. They were both frozen with not even most. They didn't have any clothes.
Oh, wow.
Like I said, the other hikers had to take their stuff, because, I love you, bud, but,
yeah,
you're not going to be using this anymore.
Also had enough time to build a fire, so,
a fire is not enough to keep you warm out there,
no.
though.
But, wonder how long with a fire it took them to pass. How long did everybody suffer? That's such a gruesome...
Well, from Kriv and Yuri's autopsy, it looked like they were alive 6 to 8 hours after they ate dinner.
Oh, okay, so not too long. I was thinking days. I don't know why.
No, not days. Okay. Not days. So, yeah, they were found under the oak tree. Kriv, on his right leg, had no footwear at all. None of them had shoes. They had socks. He had one sock on his left foot.
Oh, my goodness.
When he ran out. Yeah, so, imagine running out in the snow barefoot like that.
Yeah, that's... I can't imagine the pain they were in. Maybe their adrenaline helped a little, but I can't imagine, just prancing through, as a kid, you run outside barefoot any chance you get, and even when there's not snow on the ground and it's cold, it hurts. So I can't imagine in, feet of snow, I can't
imagine running outside without shoes in general, because my mama never let me do that.
I was always barefoot as a kid.
That's how you get hookworms.
Yes, it is.
That is 100% how you get hookworms.
It is.
Anyways, so when the bodies were closer inspected, Kriv had the backs of his hands, the skin was torn off. The skin was torn off the backs of his hands. There was blood between his fingers. The index finger was also torn, and the skin of his left shin is torn. And, his ear, his lips, his nose are covered in blood. And, the middle finger, they're all just bloody and beaten, pretty much.
Sounds like defensive wounds,
Almost.
Yeah, in the back of your hands, if you're protecting yourself, a lot of times, you throw it up like this, so, the backs of your hands are exposed.
Right. Right, absolutely. So, why don't we just take a look at what they wrote down in their autopsy, specifically. So, for Yuri Doroshenko, it says that In the hair of the deceased, they found particles of moss and pine needles. Hair is burned on the right side of the head. Ear, nose, and lips are covered with blood. Swollen upper lip is swollen with dark red hemorrhage. The right cheek, soft tissue covered with gray foam, gray liquid coming from his open mouth. Most apparent cause is pulmonary edema. Ear auricles in a bluish-red color. The right earlobe and tragus, dense patches of brown-red color. Inner surface of the right shoulder has 2 abrasions, 2 by 1.5 centimeters with no bleeding in the tissue. 2 cuts on the skin of his right armpit, has a bruise. Brown, red bruises, like various sizes, on the upper third right of his forearm. Swelling and small abrasions in the rear right hand soft tissue. Bruise bleeding into the underlying soft tissue on the back of the right hand corresponding to the second metacarpal bone. The soft tissues of both hands' fingertips are especially dark purple and severely frostbitten. If Yuri had survived, he would have required amputation of all his toes and fingers.
Wow.
In the inner surface of the left shoulder with the left shoulder, there was a lower third abrasion of brownish red color. Oh, and there's more. The inner surface of the left elbow has minor abrasions. The inner surface of the left forearm, there's a skin wound covered with dry blood and similar bruises of pale red color on shins of both legs. The body was still making efforts to fight freezing at the time. They did this by looking at his bladder.
Wow.
So most cases of hypothermic death have significantly more urine in the bladder. That foamy gray fluid that was found coming from his mouth on the right cheek, some speculate that this was something crushing his chest cavity because it was from pulmonary edema, that the force to have that gray liquid come out is the same force that they would use in interrogating people.
Wow.
So, like, he got hit fucking hard.
And all of the things that you just described sounds like he was just beat. Like...
Possibly.
How do you get all these wounds just by, like, I get, like, if you were running away from something that you would fall and trip, maybe out of, like, fear, but, like, that is a lot of wounds and abrasions and just, it sounds like he was beat.
They didn't write in the report any signs of defense wounds. So
crazy.
Yeah. They say that even though that, the gray foam could indicate that, that's just speculation.
Right.
Now, the more likely cause, it could be a nasty fall from a tree.
Okay.
Now, Cribs is also pretty lengthy as well. So he has bruises on his forehead, diffuse bleeding in the right temporal and occipital region due to damage to the temporalis muscle. Bruise on the left temporal bone. Tip of the nose is missing. No traces of blood, meaning it was frostbitten and most likely by animals post-mortem. The deceased was found face up. Frostbitten ears. Portion of the epidermis on the right hand is found in the mouth of the deceased.
Oh.
Yeah. Back of the right hand is swollen. Fingers are brownish purple. Tips of the fingers on the right hand are dark brown. Minor skin abrasions on soft tissues. Palm of the right hand, red bluish color, dark brown with wounds. And it just goes on and on and on and on. With bruising and cuts and everything. They said that his cause of death was hypothermia. And the presence of the skin between his teeth that was torn might have suggested that, when you go into hypothermia, you kind of just shiver to death and fall asleep. So they were thinking that, like, it could either have been from him biting his hand to keep himself awake to continue fighting, or just he could have just went into delirium and just bit his hand.
Wow, that sounds like an awful, awful death.
Right. And then in this report as well, like, it says that he could have also been trying to stifle a cry if he took a really bad fall.
Ugh. That makes my heart hurt.
Right. Not like they're just starting out their lives.
I know. They're so young.
And then there's Igor Dyatlov, the leader, was found afterwards not too far from Yuri and Kriv. So, let's see. On his autopsy report, he had minor abrasions on the forehead, minor abrasions on the upper eyelid, brownish abrasions above the left eyebrow. He had dry blood on his lips. His lower jaw had a missing incisor, but, that was before the trip. He had been missing that incisor for a while.
Okay.
Sometimes it just be like that.
Yeah.
Both ankles are brownish red with abrasions. His knees were bruising, but there wasn't any bleeding in the underlying tissue. He just had many scratches and, discoloration on him, to be honest, from what it looks like. Let's see what else he had on him. Yeah, more bruising. Just more bruising.
Wow.
He didn't have any internal injuries, and his cause of death was later determined as hypothermia. So, it looks like he also took some damage, but, not as much as the other two. And then there was Zena, who was found that day as well. She was found 630 meters from the cedar tree, face down. They said that her face and her hands were purple and red in color. She was better dressed than the other three that were found. Yeah, so I guess, they gave her most of the clothes. So she was probably smaller.
Yeah.
And not able to retain as much heat. I mean, because the other dudes, they were pretty,
Yeah.
They were bigger dudes.
Yeah.
They were pretty big. And, you have the two little girls with you, so they're just,
Right.
They're not little girls, but they're, in size smaller.
Yeah.
So they're here, just, take all the clothing. Or most of it.
Right.
For you to stay warm. So in her autopsy report, it says that she has an abrasion on the right frontal eminence, a pale gray area above the right eyebrow, dark abrasions on the upper lids, numerous abrasions on the left cheekbones, and then a wound with jagged edges and missing skin on the back of the right hand at the base of the third finger, frostbites on the phalanges, and more bruisings. But there is one bruise that is oddly specific and a little sus. It's a long, bright red bruise, 29 by 6 centimeters.
Wow.
In the lumbar region on the right side of the torso, and it looks like a bruise that was left from, a baton.
Wow. That's very specific.
What out in the wild, what... Think about it, because what out there is going to give you a bruise 29 by 6 centimeters big on your back?
Wow.
Even if she took a tumble, did she take a tumble and fall onto a tree branch?
Right.
That's I don't know.
And especially it being on her back. I guess my brain always goes worst case scenario, she was running, someone caught up to her and hit her in the back. That's where my mind goes with it.
Right. And they ruled her cause of death as hypothermia due to a violent accident.
Wow.
The medical report also shows that she wasn't sexually active during the time of her death. And I know this is weird because it didn't seem like they did this to the men. But they just did it just to make sure that this wasn't foul play. Right. So, it's just to double check. You always want to double check.
And it's crazy to think of how many more things might have been found on them or about them if the autopsy was done in today's time,
Right, I think about that all the time.
This could have maybe been solved. I don't know all the details yet, but I just think of how far we've come, especially with autopsies and equipment, that so much more could have been found.
Exactly. So, the next autopsy we're going to go over is Rustin.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was found by himself.
Yes.
On March the 5th.
Yes, I think.
No, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I think I said it earlier.
Yeah.
But, you get tunnel vision when you start looking at all of these.
Yes.
Just because there's so much. These poor kids.
Mm-hmm.
They went through so much. Here's his autopsy report that, also seems a little sus. So, they noted that he was found 480 meters from the cedar on March the 5th.
Mm-hmm.
His face was down. His head was towards the tent. His watch stopped at 8:45 a.m. I don't know if that was his time of death, but that was just when...
Right.
your watch doesn't stop when you die.
Exactly.
So on his, there was hemorrhages in the temporal muscles, minor brownish red abrasions on the forehead, 2 scratches 1.5 centimeters long at the distance of 0.3 in between them, brownish red bruise on the upper eyelid of the right eye with hemorrhage into the underlying tissue, traces of blood discharge from the nose, swelling and a lot of small abrasions on both sides of the face. He also had bruises on his hand bones, similar bruises common in hand-to-hand fights. So he had bruised knuckles.
Wow.
I don't know, yeah, isn't that weird?
It's very strange.
And then he had brown cherry bruises on the medial aspect of his left arm and left palm, swollen lips, bruised on the left tibia, and then epidermis is torn from the right forearm, and then there is this weird piece of information. He had a fracture of the frontal bone, 6 by 0.1 centimeters, located 1.5 centimeters from the sagittal suture. It shows, showing on separate skull trauma diagram numbers. So he had, basically, if you don't know what a sagittal suture is, it's like the place where your skull bones come together. But, he, essentially what it's saying is that he had fractures of the frontal bone and hemorrhages, right around this area. Most of the damage was to the front of his face.
I can't believe his knuckles were, bruised and everything. That does seem like hand-to-hand combat.
Or, a pretty nasty fall where you're just clumsy and don't know how to catch yourself.
True. I would guess I would just have to see the terrain they were in. I'm just imagining a lot of snow. And I guess there was lots of rocks and ice that could do, this damage.
Yeah, it would be underneath the snow, though. But, I don't know.
It just seems so weird. I don't know. I guess I would just have to see visually, what the terrain was. Because I can see this if you're, running through, a densely packed forest. But, I don't know. I think I'm just imagining maybe their scenario of stuff wrong.
Right. So during the autopsy, someone suggested the fracture in his skull could be done with a blunt object. The medical autopsy further states that he probably suffered a loss of coordination due to the initial shock of the blow, and it could have sped up his death. But again, this is all speculation.
And an autopsy done in 1959.
Right.
Which sucks, because I just feel like there's so much they could tell now.
They're not sure why he managed to harm as much as he did on the exterior of his hands and legs. But they did note that it was really unusual that most of the damage was to the front of his skull. He had no damage to the back of his skull. And they're all on the outer exterior of his limbs. So normally when you fall, you go to catch yourself.
Yeah.
And, you have bruising and stuff on the... on the inside of your hands and not on the outside.
Right. And if you're gonna fall, most likely, if you're getting that hurt, you're gonna roll. The back of yourself is going to have some abrasions.
Right. And the thing about, Rustim that's also noted is that, his injuries, again, they were unusual. So, when he laid down in the last spot that he will ever lay down in, there was an ice bed underneath him. So that means he was still warm when he laid down.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so sad to think about.
Right. So, and everyone was, during the autopsy, were just look, there's no way this man, fell down the side of a mountain and didn't bang up, all around his head.
Right.
He's not that clumsy. There's no way. He would have had bruises all over his body and not just one, a couple specific areas.
Right. They're experienced. They know what they're doing. I mean, they were working on their, what would you call it, a level 3?
Certification
3. They're not just gonna fall face down down a mountain. You wouldn't think, anyway.
Right. So, May the 5th, the last 4 bodies are found.
Yes.
And, you would think you'd get more answers.
Yeah.
I have more questions.
Oh, no.
I have more questions.
This is a very confusing, mind-boggling case.
Right. So the last 4 were found in what they call a den. It looks like they had tried to make some sort of shelter, and that's where they stayed. They were made by the surviving members 70 to 75 meters from the cedar tree in a ravine. So it was hidden from the cold areas. So they first found Ludmila, and she was wearing some of Kriv's clothes, and when they had tested them, they were highly radioactive.
The clothes were radioactive?
The clothes were radioactive. There was like a couple pieces of clothes that were radioactive.
I did not expect that. That has...
Don't
Whoa.
worry, you have questions and I have some answers, but not all the answers.
Okay.
We will get there soon.
Okay, I'm so confused.
Okay.
What?
Yeah. So, Ludmila, she was the youngest member of the group. She suffered the most damage.
Oh, no.
So, the way that they found her body was she was on her knees and her face and chest were pressed to a rock.
That is very strange to me as well.
And the pieces of clothing that they found on her that were radioactive, they, again, like I said earlier, they all belong to Kriv. Her autopsy report shows that she has soft tissues are missing around the eyes, eyebrows, nose bridge, and left cheek. Damage to the tissues around the temporal bone. Eye sockets are empty. Eyeballs are missing. Nose and cartilages are broken and flattened. Soft tissues of the upper lip are missing. Teeth and upper jaw is exposed. Tongue is missing. Ribs 2, 3, 4, 5 are broken on the right side. 2 fracture lines are visible. Ribs 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are broken on the left side. 2 fracture lines are visible. Massive hemorrhage in the heart's right atrium. A bruise in the middle left thigh. And then further in the autopsy showed that her stomach contained 100 grams of dark brown mucosal mass. It's indicative of coagulated blood.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so... Yeah, her body, like I said, you know how earlier you said it was a little suspicious, like how she was laying?
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to note that she was laying on... It was a natural edge. Like, it wasn't like her body was put onto the rock.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know how it was because I wasn't back there that day. So I'm assuming it was frozen, but it was like a ledge and a natural stream was coming through. So imagine her laying on the rock and like water is coming through and rolling down her body, kind of.
Oh.
So that's how she was found, but it doesn't really explain anything.
So, do they note whether they think her eyes and stuff were missing because of animals, or were they missing because of something else? Or did they not know?
They don't know.
Oh my god. That sounds like she was beat more than anybody else.
Well, what's really weird was, like, there was no further explanation of the tongue missing. It was very vague. It just said tongue missing.
That's very strange because you think of like, this is gruesome, but when someone dies out in nature, you've got birds that will come get your eyes and stuff. But a tongue is a very hardy muscle. Like, that's harder to get out.
Yeah,
So, that's strange.
Well, the thing about the tongue was that the coagulated blood in her stomach, that basically just showed her tongue was ripped out when she was still alive.
Oh my word. And most animals aren't going to take your tongue while you're still alive. Most animals scavenge and they're not going to eat you while you're alive.
Yeah, and
that's suspicious.
It explains why her eyeballs are missing.
Do they explain why her clothes were radioactive?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think to the Uris, the two Yuri and Yuri, so Yuri and Kriv,
Yes.
they worked at a nuclear power plant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and back in 1959, I'm going to assume that they didn't have the correct PPE for that.
Yeah, I'm gonna say not.
Right.
I thought you were gonna tell me it's aliens or something.
No.
I was very confused.
That is the theory I hate the most. I feel like it's the laziest theory they have.
That's fair.
Anyways, yeah, so she suffered the most damage.
Bless her soul. That makes your stomach turn.
It does make your stomach turn. And, like, I mean, again, we'll go over the theories at the end of this, but just know that, like, she was still alive when she laid down.
And you wonder why, with it being this cold, why would you choose to lay on a rock that has a stream coming off of it?
I think since it was in February, it was frozen, and by the time they found them in May. The snow had melted, and that was the only way they really found their bodies. Like, that was the only way they were able to find their bodies.
Man.
So Simon, the oldest of the
he
group,
was, what, 38?
37, 38?
37, 38, yeah. Okay.
His autopsy report is actually the smallest here.
So he had the least damage, right?
Supposedly. I mean, everyone else has a lot of bruises, but that being said, his is still weird. His eyeballs were also missing. He had missing soft tissues around his left eyebrow. His bone is exposed. There's an open wound on the right side of his skull, and his skull is exposed.
Wow.
He had flail chest, so he had broken ribs 2, 3, 4, and 5 on the right side, and 2 fractured lines. The thing about his body was that he had a camera on his body.
Oh.
And, they were really hoping to develop the film and see what was on his camera.
Yeah.
But a lot of it was damaged.
That sucks.
Well, I mean, like, they're basically in a river stream, and then all the water got into the camera, and all the snow. So.
And they were found so late that.
Right.
So, my question about him is, did he just have the camera on him when he left the tent, or did he grab that camera before he left the
Plot twist, they don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
So many questions. Man.
All right, the next body, Alexander.
Okay.
The waistband of his sweater and lower pants were also radioactive, but guess who those belong to?
Yeah. Okay.
So there is a lack of soft tissue around his eyes. Eyebrows are missing. The eyebrows are missing. Skull bones are exposed. So all right here. Gone. The bridge of his nose is straight. And the nose cartilage is soft when palpated. It's mobile. So the base of the nose is flat when nostrils compressed. This doesn't necessarily mean he had a broken nose, though.
Okay.
He did have a wound behind his right ear, a deformed neck, diffuse bleeding underlying the tissue of his left knee, softened and whitened skin of the fingers and feet consisted of putrefaction in a wet environment. Overall, skin had a gray-green color and a tinge of purple, which I feel like that's not abnormal for finding bodies.
Months later?
Yeah. Sorry if you hear our husbands over there. They're being stupid.
They're having a lot of fun with their video game.
Okay.
So, question about these. They were found near water.
They're found basically in a river stream.
So, I know that the woman's tongue could not be missing because of the water, obviously, but could their soft tissue on their face be missing because of erosion due to the water? Is that a theory?
Well, like I said, the tongue was ripped out while she was alive.
Right, and that water doesn't explain that, but what about, like, washing the eyeballs out and the eyebrows off and, like, the cartilage and stuff being soft? Maybe that's from water, possibly?
Possibly.
Not the tongue. Somebody took her tongue, but...
Everyone else's eyeballs were there.
I don't know. That's
Everyone
so
else still had
strange.
their eyeballs.
That's very strange.
I don't know how bodies decompose. I don't
either.
I don't do people. I could tell you if it were a dog. If it were a dog, I could tell you. People, I cannot.
No.
I don't know people.
I could just keep thinking there's so much testing that could have been done if their autopsies were done in now time. So much.
Yeah, so there's also Nikolai.
Mm-hmm.
He suffered skull fractures as well. To the side of his skull. So his autopsy says multiple fractures to the temporal bone with extensions of the frontal and siphono bones. The close-up fractures to the skull shown in the picture. Picture will be put on the video.
Yes.
There's a bruise on his upper lip and the left side, and a hemorrhage on the lower forearm. Anyway, so let's get into the theories about what happened. So, now that I have presented you with what happened, the timeline and the autopsies, what are you thinking happened to them?
My theory would definitely be somebody killed them because of the tongue missing and how badly beaten some of them seemed, That would be where my thought process goes.
Okay, yeah. It does seem really suspicious what happened, and I honestly, I would think murder would come to mind. However, the autopsy showed that they, in fact, weren't murdered, or that's what the official autopsy says. They did not rule it as a murder, though there is some evidence on there that we were like, hey, that's fucking suspicious.
Yeah.
So, one of the main theories is going to be the Mansi people. And they are the indigenous tribe that live in the area. They, they're indigenous, but they're not, primitive or anything.
Right, not feral.
No. So, initially, people thought that the Mansi people, they hunted them down and murdered them, but that was not the case. Right. And also, they were like, we had nothing to fucking do with that. And also, I'm pretty sure some of the Mansi people helped with the search.
Right. They would probably know the area best. So.
Exactly. So, that theory is thrown out the window.
Absolutely.
Now, the next theory is probably one of the most popular ones. It's gonna be, this could possibly have been done by the Yeti.
The Yeti? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that I'm totally on board with the Yeti, but if you are, I respect it.
Yeah, so, again, people speculate that this could be the work of the Yeti, and maybe not. Now, this idea came off of a photo that was taken off of Nikolai's camera. It's called photo number 17, and it's an image of a dark figure in the back of the woods that's kind of watching them, a little hunched over. Now, it does kind of look like your very stereotypical Bigfoot image. So they were like, hey, maybe he caught a picture of the thing that was chasing them around or whatever. Now, the idea of this is that the Yeti could have possibly gone up to their tent and tried to open the front of their tent. And of course, with nowhere else to go but the front of the tent, the thought process there was they cut themselves out of the tent.
Right.
I don't know why they wouldn't cut themselves out of the back of the tent rather than the sides. So, there's that. And, I don't know. If something was coming through the front of my tent, my initial thought would not to be to cut myself out of the side of the tent.
Yeah, I don't think mine would either.
I'd be like, oh, I gotta go to the back of the tent.
Yeah, but they may have thought, since there was 9 of them in there, then, 4 cutting on this side, 5 cutting on this side, bigger chance to get out, I guess, maybe, if that's what did happen.
Right. And, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I don't know, it just seems a little weird to me. But I do like the idea of maybe they did not camp out back down into the woods because it was stalking them and they were a little off easy, so they decided to camp out on the slope where they could get higher ground and watch the woods from there. It possibly makes sense to me, and it could also possibly explain why the 2 boys under the cedar tree were pretty banged up. I mean, could it be possible that he just picked them up and, like, you know, slammed them against the tree or whatever? Although the autopsies don't show that one of them, I think it was Kriv. At this point, there's so many things in the autopsy.
Yeah.
I know one of them had, like, gray matter.
Yeah.
That was foaming, and they said that was indicative of, you know, pulmonary edema and pressure to the chest. So, maybe? But I think it would show it a little bit differently. It would show up a little bit differently.
Right,
rather than, like, his chest was being pushed. You know what I mean? Because if you're slammed against the tree at full force, like, there would be some sort of marking or something.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree.
So, or, you know, could the boys have seen the Yeti, got scared, and climbed up to the top of the tree, trying to get away from him, and then, you know, they mislip, or they were on the same branch, it fell, and, like, they just fell, hitting other branches all the way down, and then falling into the fire.
That's a good...
Could that be possible as well? So, like, that thought's in the air, you know? And I know that a lot of cultures and everything from, you know, northern regions where there's snow and mountains, they think of the Yeti as not the missing link. They don't think of it as, like, a primate creature. They think of it as a mythical being.
Right.
So, maybe that's it. Now, the next theory, I honestly don't think this theory is... I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. So the next theory is aliens.
Oh. I knew that would be in there somewhere.
Yeah, I didn't really know what to write about this, because I know, like, Ancient Aliens did an episode on this, and I was like, they were chased down by aliens because they showed that there was impact, and, like, could it be that, like, maybe the impact didn't show up on the outside of their bodies, but it could have been on the inside of their bodies, and they just wouldn't have known because it was 1959. Now... I don't know, it just doesn't scream alien to me, because normally when there is alien abduction or cattle mutilation or whatever, again, they don't really choose people to dissect and mutilate, and then when they are dissecting and mutilating, it's more clean. It's more scientific. Like, the cuts are clean as if they are,
done in a lab, almost.
Right, and then, like, they're burned while being cut at the same time. I can't remember what that is called. Cauterized. They're cauterized at the same time. And then blood of blood. Like, almost in an intelligent scientific matter. And it seems that there is some sort of reason behind the dissection of cattle and stuff. This just seems not like that. And my only thought is if, like, maybe, perhaps... like, some really shitty alien version of teenagers were being fucking sadistic and was like, look at these little fuckers, and, like, just kind of, like, mess with them like kids do with ants. But I just don't think alien. Yeah. I just, like, I feel like an intelligent creature would not do this without a purpose. Because it's just, like, why? Why are you... And, like, people who do report being with aliens, like, reported... that they pick them up to figure something out about them. Like, there is always a purpose, it seems. So, like, that, I don't know. I just don't think that it was aliens.
Yeah, I'm not on board with the aliens either.
It doesn't scream alien to me. So, you know,
I think the aliens wouldn't, if it was aliens, I think the deaths would be more uniform than they were. Not... some had this, and some had this. Like, I don't think it would be as busy.
Right. Now, I feel like this one is a little bit more plausible. So, I wrote this theory down as the government, aka the feds were watching.
Oh, goodness.
So, okay, so as you know, the Dyatlov group, they made their own route. Like, they drew it out themselves, the committee approved of it. But what if they drew out the route, but they didn't realize that the route was part of government property?
Oh.
Kind of like Area 51. So if you look up Area 51, there are levels to Area 51. Right. You're on the outer level, they're not going to tell you. that you're in the outer level of Area 51 because they don't want you to go in further. What if they planned their route out on one of the outer layers and, like, you know, the committee approved of it? Maybe they didn't know, or maybe they did actually know, and that's why Simon was added at the last minute. So, the thing about Simon, you see, was he's a World War II veteran. However, there's something a little fishy about him.
Okay.
I know there's something a little fishy about the mustache. Okay, it looked too perfect.
Yeah.
I don't think it was real, homies. I just... it looks too perfect. But in 2018, his body was exhumed and his DNA was ran. It was ran twice. And they were comparing it to the DNA of his niece, which was on his sister's side. The first time they ran that DNA, it did not match up with her DNA. And then the second time they ran it, it did match up. Now, because of that, some people think that Simon was not really Simon. They think that there was a man who was just living under the same name and taking the life of this dead soldier who he somehow looked like.
Oh.
So either he was put on the expedition to guide them through this area without, like, trying to figure out government things, or he was a spy from another country under the guise of that dead soldier living his life, quote unquote. Now, you know, here's another theory with the feds were watching theory in my head. So, you know, one of the pictures on Crib's camera was like this really blurry picture. It almost looks like he took it on accident, kind of like when you accidentally take a photo, you know, when you put your phone in your back pocket. Yeah. But there's like balls of light on there from what it looks like. Now, there are other hikers who report that same night that the group possibly died, like somewhere in between February 1st and February 2nd, that there were strange orange globes. Globes.
Oh, wow.
In the sky. And some people think that what happened was the government set off one of their nuclear weapons in the air, like, because, you know, it's like out in the middle of fucking nowhere, like, who's gonna be out there, you know, like, not thinking about it, and that it rained down fireballs from this weapon and landed on the group, and that's why the two boys were burned the way they were. They didn't actually fall into a fire.
Oh.
Right? So that I mean, that's just a theory, you know?
Okay.
So I don't know what you think about that, but...
It's interesting.
I think it's a little sus because even though the first time they ran his DNA in 2018, it didn't show any relation, and the second time they ran it, it did. That wasn't enough for them to open up a case, but I feel like that's something that was, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Like, they ran it and was like, oh shoot, we forgot, we messed up, and then ran it the second time and was like, oh, it matched, you know?
Like, maybe it was all a cover-up?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, maybe... Because, like, some of their bodies were found by soldiers. So, who's to say that Rustim and Xena, you know, remember Xena had that bruise on her that also looked like it was from a baton. So, what if Rustim and Xena, like, they came across, like, soldiers and they were, in fact, murdered because, like, their bodies were a little sus?
Right.
Who's to say that did not happen?
I see that too.
You see that too? You think it's all a cover-up? Okay, so here's the new and more realistic theory that they came up with in 2021.
Okay.
So this is fairly recent. Yeah. The most plausible idea of what happened was with the help of science and animation. So you were saying throughout this episode, like, I'm pretty sure this would be solved had this happened in today's time, and I think you're right. So when the movie Frozen came out, the animation for the snow was amazing, and they took that animation from Disney and used it to help them solve part of what was going on.
That is amazing.
Right? Because the way that it was animated in Frozen was the most realistic animation, so they essentially could take that animation and use it and try to imitate the snow that was falling that day.
Wow. Yeah.
And here's the thing, they also used it to see if it could be possible that a small avalanche did happen and land on their tent, and that's why they had to cut themselves out. You know what I'm saying? So that seems pretty plausible. So the idea is that they were on the slope, and something happened to where a small patch of snow landed on their tent. I say small, but like a decent size for them to think that the tent was covered and an avalanche was going to come. So when that first patch hit, they're like, oh shit, an avalanche is coming. We have like 3 seconds to get the fuck out. Mm-hmm. And that's why they ran out. Like, they just cut themselves out of the tent and ran, thinking like more snow was going to come down and kill them. Right?
Yeah, I see that.
So they ran down to the woods, all of them, where, you know, they're trying to get warm and stuff, and they made a fire, but the fire wasn't good enough. So Kriv and Yuri climbed to the top of the tree to try to get dry firewood, because everything on the ground is like wet. It's snow. So they're trying to get something like that's dry. They fall out of the tree. Okay. Hit every fucking branch on the way down, land in the fire, and burn themselves, and their clothes are dry, so they catch on fire, and that's how they have the burns on them. Okay. Now, once they died, the group was like, we're gonna die out here if we don't have supplies. So they take Kriv and Yuri, lay them down next to each other, in the, like, you know, they laid them down with care. They were their friends. Right. They put on their clothes, and the 3, or the 4, no, it's the 4, yeah, it was the 4, Igor, Zena, Rastim, yes, no, it was a 3, because I'm trying to count in my head. Yeah, it was 3. They went and tried to climb back to the tent to get their stuff, to see if it could save them, and they died on the way up. The other 4 were like, oh shit, those 3 are not coming back, we have to do something. So what they do is they dig into the snowbank, trying to make like a little cave, kind of like the idea of an igloo. If you're in a small enclosed area, even though it's made out of snow, it could still be warm.
Right.
Where they fucked up is where they did not realize that they were digging above a riverbank, and they dug too deep and fell through the ice. Okay. And actually fell a couple feet. So, bang, 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 they fall a couple feet. The 3 boys, like, you know, like, they're hurt, but they kind of die, like, right where they laid. And, like, maybe, you know, maybe one of them was like, oh no, like, my friends are dying, and he went to protect the body of the other one. However, Ludmila was still alive when this happened. Now, it was possible that she could have bit her tongue off on the way down.
That's what I was gonna ask, yeah.
She could have bit her tongue off on the way down. She could have hit her head hard enough to where, like, maybe her eyeballs fell out. I don't know. I still don't know about the eyeballs.
Animals, maybe?
Possibly.
Birds, you know.
Possibly. I'm not sure. Yeah. Because if animals or birds showed up and took her eyeballs, you would think that there would be, like, some sort of, like, scratching around the tissue or something, but who knows? I still don't have a plausible explanation for the eyeballs of Simon and Ludmila. Yeah. Other than, like, maybe they just disintegrated, because sometimes...
Yeah, and they were found... Were they the ones found last?
They were found last.
Yeah, so they were found in May.
So yeah, it was just like the eyeballs are missing, and it's just like, okay. Yeah. Anyways, the idea is, like, she bit her tongue off on the way down, and she was still alive.
Oh, my goodness.
Because she was still alive, it's like when you get stabbed and you're dying, but you're still able to talk and walk and breathe and do all of this stuff. She was still alive and tried to get up and go, but she started falling down and, like, succumbed to her injuries, and, like, she laid herself down on her knees against this rock, thinking, like, maybe she could pull herself up.
Right, that makes sense, yeah.
So that is the more plausible one, and again, the answer for the radioactive clothes is that, like, the 2 boys, like, worked at a nuclear power plant. So this is the hypothesis of what happened.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that gives logical explanations for everything, really.
Right. Does it not?
Yeah.
It definitely does. Now, I do want to say that some of the things I noticed in this is, like, there was a lot of really suspicious stuff happening on the end of, like, the search party and the government. So, like, during the search party, another camera was found in the tent, and one of the search and rescue people took it and did not turn it in.
Oh my goodness.
So they went and got the film developed, and the government was like, bitch, what the fuck are you doing with those? Hand them over. But they didn't get that till a lot later.
Did they ever release what was on it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did.
Okay.
It's called, like, the loose film under the website.
Okay.
Now another thing to note is, like, the tent that was found on the 26th was actually found 2 days prior. And was kept a secret.
By...
Part of the search party, I think it was...
Why are we keeping secrets in a search party?
I don't know, and that's why that new flashlight that you were like, maybe it was laid there recently, like, they were still like, could have possibly been from them. They just didn't tell anybody. That they're like, hey, I found a tent. And they, when asked about it, they're like, I was too tired to check it out fully, so I just,
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah, that was a little sus.
Yeah.
And another thing to note is that during the investigation and the search, people were getting fired on and off, and, like, positions were changing.
Wow. So there was a lot of probably miscommunication, lost information, stuff lost in translation between the search party and authorities.
And it makes me wonder, I was like, is this a case of, like, you're really shitty at your fucking job?
Yeah, like pure negligence?
Or was this a case of, like, maybe one of these kids knew something?
Uh-huh.
And when they died, because they kept journals and they had personal items, and when they died, the government was like, we need to get those items, we need to cover up these deaths.
Mm-hmm.
We'll never know.
No. So,
the Dyatlov Pass, is still one of the biggest mysteries of the 20th century. Yeah. And we still don't have the answers for it.
But I still have a lot of questions.
Right. Any last thoughts before, like, we, end this episode?
There's just a lot that is sketchy and a lot... I feel like these kids definitely endured a really harsh death that is heartbreaking, and, I'm sure generations of their families are still alive, and, it would be nice to have a true closure, but, with it being, 64 years ago,
I mean,
we're never really...
Yeah.
Probably won't get that, but it would be nice to know the true answers.
Right. And, another thing to think about is, like, Yuri Yudin, the lone survivor, was 100% sure, like, on his deathbed, he was like, no, they were definitely taken out of that tent at gunpoint. But I'm not sure if he was saying that out of, like, grief and survivor's guilt, thinking that, like, there's no way this could have happened to my group of people, because they were experienced, they knew what they were doing, there's no fucking way, like, we'll never know unless we were there. We'll never know. The only one who would have known was maybe Ludmila, but she was the last one to probably go.
Wow. All of them had horrific deaths.
Yeah.
That's awful.
And again, no one has the answers. What do I think? I'm not really sure. You guys can come up with your own conclusions. Probably do a lot more research than I did. I mean, I felt like I dug so deep, I just got myself tunnel vision, and there's so many details that I was like, I don't know what to think anymore. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm being lied to a little bit. I feel like, you know what I mean? Like, I have all the pieces. I can't put them together.
Mm-hmm. And we would love to know what you guys think. Always, leave us a comment or email us and tell us, your theories on this, your thoughts. Like, if we left anything out, like, what do you know? What have you heard? We want to know it all.
Yeah, we want to know it all. We're open for discussion with these.
Absolutely.
And I think that wraps up this episode. It's ending on a I don't know the answer note. So our next episode is going to be a special one. Courtney and I are actually going to work on the next episode together. Yes. It is about a small town murder in my local town from Ringgold, Georgia, that I came across on the Ringgold High School memorial page. Yep. So one of the previous classmates was murdered in my hometown, and this was something I've never heard about growing up there at all. So,
Very swept under the rug, it almost seems.
very
Just a little
swept
bit.
under the rug, or I don't know. I
Lost through the years, maybe, because this was, 21 years ago?
it was 2000, so 23 years ago.
Yeah.
But you would think that they would have more means of figuring out a case.
Yeah.
But of course, like, we'll never know. But this case is going to be a little bit special since we'll be able to actually get our hands on the actual paperwork and cold case file. So just stay in touch. Follow us on Instagram if you liked any of our stuff. If you like, our weird pictures that we post or the reels on Instagram. Follow, on YouTube. Please follow us on Spotify. And, send us an email. Tell us what you think. Send us in your horror stories, I guess. And we will probably in the future compile, compilations of stories. Yeah. But that is all for today. Links will be in the description below. Bye!